Amy, has anyone told you the legend of Morris Bridge yet? I rolled my eyes. Don't waste her time with that garbage. It's not garbage. It's a captivating legend, Jingwen said, leaning in from the back seat. In the 70s, a 13-year-old girl named Mary Ann lived on the west side of town. She was your average girl, except for one thing. She was completely blind. We turned onto a narrow dirt road flanked by deep forest. Because middle schoolers are terrible, she was teased endlessly and didn't have many friends. So, one warm fall day, when two of the girls in her class invited her to hang out on the bridge, she happily accepted. "Aw, that's so nice of them," Amy said. Jingwen glared at her. No, it wasn't nice. It was a trick. When they got to the middle of the bridge, the two girls ran away, leaving her stranded. She called out for help. She cupped her hands and called, "Help me, Amy, help me." Amy shivered. Jingwen grinned, a crooked, mischievous grin, and continued. Nobody heard her. Finally, she decided to try to make it back across the bridge by herself. Tragically, she took a wrong step and, thunk, plummeted into the waters below. And she drowned. The end. I said, "Great story. Yay." Jingwen ignored me and leaned forward. Her voice was but a whisper in our ears. "The tragic death turned poor, sweet Mary Ann into a vengeful spirit." I felt Jingwen's breath on my neck and shuddered. They say if you stand in the middle of the bridge and close your eyes, she'll lead you safely to the other side of the bridge. But if you open your eyes, she grabbed Amy's shoulders. "She'll push you in the river." Amy yelped. "We're here," I said, rolling to a stop in front of the bridge. And no ghost, just an abandoned, rotting, ugly bridge. "Carter saw her once," Jingwen said, ignoring me completely. She was standing in the middle of the bridge, wearing a white dress. "Carter also believes his house is haunted," I said. "Sees the lights flickering and stuff. Probably just needs a good electrician." "Blair?" Amy was scrunched down in her seat, scanning the bridge. "What's wrong?" "I thought I saw..." She trailed off. "Jingwen, look what you did." Amy's so scared she's seeing things. "If this is all nonsense to you, Blair, I dare you to go out there." "What?" "You heard me." She poked me with her high heel. "Go. Prove us all wrong." I looked at the bridge. Even I had to admit, it looked awfully creepy. The metal frame was rusted and grimy. The wood was gouged with rot. And the river, rushing below, was much larger and fiercer than I remembered. But my stubbornness got the better of me. "Fine, I will." I slammed the door and stepped out into the night. The bridge rose up in the darkness, lit only by the headlights behind me and the half moon above. I felt a twinge of fear, but took a deep breath and stepped onto the bridge. Creak! The wood groaned in response. I slowly stepped towards the center of the bridge, one hand dangling on the wet railing. The girls' chatter faded, replaced by the rush of the river below. My footsteps thumped on the wet wood. I reached the center of the bridge, shut my eyes, and tried to reassure myself. This is the easiest dare I'd ever done. Much easier than TPing Mr. Wilson's car, or doing a lap around the school in my pajamas. I shivered. Was it this cold when I left the car? Or that one time I pretended to be Carter's girlfriend. Yuck. I stopped. Over the rush of the water, over the rattling of the branches, I heard a faint sound, like something passing through the water, breaking the gentle waves. I laughed. Now I'm imagining things. Ha. Jingwen really has a way of getting to people. I smiled and grinned and laughed until my face was sore. Splash. The grin flew off my face. Just a fish, or a turtle. We have a lot of turtles around here, don't we? I told myself, don't let that stupid story get to you. I kept my eyes tightly shut. Splash. The air grew even colder. Thump. I felt the soft vibrations of the wood under my feet. Jingwen, I called. Silence. Oh, haha, very funny. You're going to sneak up on me. Give me a scare. How convenient that I have to keep my eyes closed. Thump, thump, dull thumps, not the sharp click of high heels. Amy, I said, uncertainly. The thumps grew louder, stilted, uncertain footsteps. Hello? I called, my voice quavering. Thump, thump. I felt the air shift, and along with it, a terrible smell, like a dog or a pond that had been left to fester and decay. I shut my eyes tighter. Thump. The steps were loud now, just a few feet away. My heart pounded in my chest. My mouth was dry. Silence. I let out a long sigh of relief. It must have just been my imagination, or a wayward squirrel that now scurried into the bushes. How silly of me to actually think for a second that it might be a ghost of Mary Ann. I froze. I heard another sound, faintly, over the rush of the river. Drip, drip. The sound of water dripping to the ground. I stood, paralyzed. I tried to move my legs, but I was frozen with fear. My heart pounded so loud it throbbed in my ears. Drip, then a rustling sound. Cold, wet, brushing the back of my neck. Amy, Jingwen, I screamed, but the only response was the drips, the thumps, the rush of the river below. Don't open your eyes, don't open your eyes, I chanted to myself, shaking with fear. Thump, thump. The air shifted. The protrude smell filled my nostrils, and the cold, wet fingers brushed against my arm. Take her hand. Let her lead you across the bridge. But whatever you do, don't open your eyes. I stretched my arm out. It brushed something cold, smooth, bare. My heart pounded. My legs felt weak. The wet hand locked into mine, and then it tugged. I took an uncertain step forward, my legs shaking. Don't open your eyes, I chanted under my breath. Another step forward, and another. I tried not to think about the thuds of her feet, the drips of water of her body. I tried not to imagine what she looked like. A 13-year-old blind girl that drowned 40 years ago, waterlogged and decayed. I tried not to picture her face, with milky white eyes that couldn't see, wrinkled blue skin from sitting in the water. My toe caught on something. I fell forward, and my eyes flew open. A flash of blue skin, tangled black hair, white eyes, and then nothing. I pushed myself up and sprinted down the bridge. Don't look back. The bridge seemed to stretch as I ran. The car, the grass, the dirt road only crawled towards me as my feet thumped across the wood. Only a few more steps, I told myself, as my lungs burned and my legs grew weak. Almost there. I heard the thud of her feet behind me, stilted and clumsy. Almost. The air grew ice cold. The decayed smell filled my nostrils. Almost. My feet hit the grass. I ran to the car, screaming, and slammed the door behind me. Blair? Are you okay? She's coming, I shouted, jamming the key into ignition. I'm so sorry. I couldn't help it. I tripped. A reflex. What are you talking about? Jingwen asked. I don't see anybody, Amy said. No, she was there, chasing me down the bridge. I screamed, pointing frantically. I looked up. The bridge was empty. My heart slowed. I sank back into the sea. You're right. I must have imagined it. I began to laugh. I really was terrified out there. All for nothing. I shifted into reverse, glancing at the backup camera. No. The blurry image of a figure standing right behind the car. A girl with white eyes. I pulled out fast, kicking up clouds of dirt. Hey, what? Slow down, Jingwen screamed. Amy was wailing, her hands over her eyes. I ignored them. They didn't see her. They didn't understand. I barreled down the road, not daring to look in the rearview mirror. We were almost to the main road, where there'd be street lights, stop signs, other cars. We'd be out of her territory, and somehow I knew if I could just get there fast enough, she wouldn't follow. I hit the gas. Jingwen shrieked. Amy screamed. The car lurched, bouncing over the dirt violently. The intersection was up ahead. We were almost there. We flew towards the road, all of us screaming. We made it, I shouted. I glanced back at the dirt road, empty. I smiled as I walked up to the front door. Jingwen and Amy thought I was insane. The car had a couple new dents, but I was safe, and that was all that mattered. I clicked the keys into the lock. My heart was finally starting to slow. The pounding in my head was fading. I'll make some tea, I said to myself. That'll put me to sleep. I stepped into the foyer, humming to myself. My feet squelched on the floor. I looked down. It was wet. Shout out to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan and Tacy. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to creating more content for everyone.